The music thumped through Jake Sullivan's living room as I approached my wife Sarah near the kitchen island champagne glass in hand. 3 years of marriage and I still felt that familiar warmth when I saw her laughing with friends. Her red dress caught the party lights perfectly, and I couldn't help but smile as I moved closer for our usual affectionate greeting. But when my arms reached around her waist, everything changed. Sarah's body went rigid. Her hands shot up and shoved me backward with surprising force. Her voice cut through the party noise like a blade. "Don't touch me!" The entire conversation stopped. Friends turned to stare. My face burned with humiliation as whispers started around us. Sarah's eyes held something I'd never seen before: cold, calculated disgust. My sister Angela appeared beside me, her concerned expression cutting through my shock. "Bad night?" Angela asked quietly, guiding me away from the stunned crowd toward the back patio. The cool evening air hit my flushed face as I tried processing what just happened. I forced a smile, though something deep inside me felt strangely calm. "Last one, actually." Angela's eyebrows raised at my response. She closed the sliding door behind us and checked to make sure we were alone. "Stephen, we need to talk. I've been watching Sarah for months now, and what happened in there doesn't surprise me." My defensive instincts kicked in immediately. "Angela, she's probably just stressed from work. You know how demanding her marketing job can be." "No, this goes deeper." Angela pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. "I took this last Tuesday at Romano's downtown. Look at the timestamp, 2:15 in the afternoon." The image showed Sarah sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. They were leaning close together, her hand covering his on the white tablecloth. The intimate body language was unmistakable. She told me she had client meetings all Tuesday afternoon. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Angela swiped to another photo. Same restaurant, different angle. Sarah was laughing at something the man said, her head thrown back in genuine joy. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her laugh like that with me. "There's more." Angela's voice was gentle but firm. "I followed her to the Meridian Apartments on Elm Street 3 separate times. Always the same unit, 427. She stays for hours." The champagne in my system suddenly felt like poison. "How long have you been watching her?" "Since I noticed her behavior changed 6 months ago. Stephen, she's been buying expensive jewelry and clothes, but not with your credit cards. I checked. She's got money coming from somewhere else." I sank into one of Jake's patio chairs, the party sounds muffled behind us. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I needed to be absolutely certain. And because I knew you'd defend her no matter what evidence I showed you." Angela sat across from me. "But tonight, when she humiliated you like that in front of everyone, I realized she's moving to the next phase of whatever she's planning." "Next phase?" Angela pulled a manila envelope from her purse. "I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago. Marcus Webb, he's former FBI and completely trustworthy. Everything's in here, but Stephen, you need to prepare yourself. This goes far beyond what you're imagining." I stared at the envelope, afraid to open it. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I've already spoken to an attorney." Angela's voice was steady, but I could see worry in her eyes. "Promise me you'll meet with Marcus tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock at Mel's Diner on 5th Street. Don't tell Sarah anything about this conversation." Through the sliding door, I could see Sarah chatting animatedly with Jake's wife, Linda, acting as if nothing had happened. Her performance was flawless concerned wife, dealing with a difficult husband. "She's going to ask why we were out here so long," I said. "Tell her I was upset about Mom's medical bills and needed someone to talk to." Angela squeezed my shoulder. "Stephen, whatever you do, act completely normal until you talk to Marcus. Don't let on that you know anything." I nodded, tucking the envelope inside my jacket. As we walked back toward the party, Sarah immediately approached with a concerned expression. "Everything okay? You two looked pretty serious out there." "Just family stuff," I replied, surprised at how easily the lie came. "Angela's worried about Mom's upcoming surgery." Sarah's face softened with what looked like genuine sympathy. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help." The rest of the party passed in a blur. Sarah was attentive and affectionate, apologizing quietly for her earlier outburst and blaming it on hormones and work stress. She held my hand during Jake's toast and even suggested we leave early so we could spend time together at home. But I couldn't stop thinking about those photos. The way Sarah had looked at that stranger like he was her entire world. When had she last looked at me that way? Mel's diner smelled like bacon grease and coffee when I arrived the next morning. Marcus Webb was exactly what I'd expected from a former FBI agent, mid-50s, gray hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He was seated in a corner booth with multiple folders spread across the table. "You must be Steven. Angela's told me a lot about you." His handshake was firm and professional. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I think you'll appreciate knowing the truth." I slid into the booth across from him, my stomach churning despite the comforting diner atmosphere. "Angela said there's more than just the affair." "Much more." Marcus opened the first folder. "Your wife has been systematically stealing money from your joint accounts for the past 8 months. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 800 there. But it's escalated significantly." He showed me bank statements I'd never seen before. Sarah had opened accounts at 3 different banks using our joint tax returns as proof of income. The withdrawals were disguised as legitimate expenses: medical bills, car repairs, home maintenance. "How is this possible? I check our accounts regularly." "She's been intercepting the statements and replacing them with forgeries. Very sophisticated ones." Marcus pulled out side-by-side comparisons. "Notice the subtle differences in font spacing and the account numbers. She's been using photo editing software to alter the balances." My hands shook as I examined the documents. The real statements showed our savings account was nearly empty. Over $40,000 had been transferred out in a 6-month period. But that's not the worst part. Marcus opened a second folder. "She's been accessing your business accounts as well. You gave her power of attorney for emergency purposes. Remember?" I nodded, remembering when I'd added her to the business paperwork after we got married. It seemed like a practical decision at the time. "She's been creating fake invoices for non-existent vendors and writing checks to herself. The amounts match legitimate business expenses so they don't stand out in your quarterly reviews." The invoices looked completely authentic: office supplies, cleaning services, equipment maintenance. But the addresses were all post office boxes registered under false names that Sarah had created. "How much from the business?" "43,000 so far. She's been very careful to stay under the threshold that would trigger automatic audits." I felt sick. That's over 80,000 total. $87,462 to be exact. Marcus's voice was matter-of-fact, but not unsympathetic. "There's something else you need to see." He opened a third folder containing hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and shopping records. All were charged to credit cards I didn't recognize, but the signatures were unmistakably Sarah's. She's been using the stolen money to fund a completely separate lifestyle. Weekend trips to mountain resorts, shopping sprees at high-end boutiques, expensive dinners at places you two have never been together. The receipts painted a picture of a woman living lavishly while her husband worked 60-hour weeks to maintain their household. Designer shoes that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. Hotel suites in Aspen and Napa Valley. "She's not doing this alone," Marcus continued. "The man in the photos Angela showed you is David Martinez. He's been helping her launder the money through his consulting business." The name hit me like a physical blow. "David Martinez is my business partner. We started the company together 5 years ago. He's my best friend." Marcus's expression grew grim. "I'm sorry, Steven. I know this is difficult, but David has been manipulating your business accounts to help Sarah steal the money. He's been creating false billing cycles and phantom client payments that get redirected to accounts he controls." He showed me a complex chart mapping the money flow. David would create fake invoices for legitimate-sounding services. I would approve them as part of routine business expenses, and the payments would go to shell companies that David and Sarah had established. "They've been planning this for over a year," Marcus explained. The affair started as a way for David to get close to your financial information, but it evolved into something much more elaborate. I stared at the evidence, feeling like my entire life was collapsing. What are they planning to do with all this money? Marcus closed the folders and leaned forward. Based on what I've observed, they're preparing to disappear together. David has been gradually transferring his share of your business to holding companies he controls. Sarah has been setting up the financial infrastructure they'll need to start fresh somewhere else. But we're married. She can't just take everything and leave. Actually, she can if she plays it right. And Steven, I think she's about to make her final move. The waitress refilled our coffee cups, oblivious to the fact that my world was ending. Around us, other customers chatted about weekend plans and work gossip, while I tried to process the scope of my wife's betrayal. What do you mean, final move? Marcus pulled out one last document, a business card for a law firm downtown. Sarah visited attorney Jennifer Walsh last Friday. The receptionist remembered her because she was extremely emotional and claimed to be in an urgent domestic situation. The implication was clear. She's filing for divorce. Not just any divorce. Based on the law firm she chose and the emotional state she was in, I believe she's going to claim domestic abuse. It's the fastest way to get emergency court orders that would freeze your assets and force you out of your own home and business. I felt the room spinning around me, but I've never touched her in anger. I've never even raised my voice at her. Doesn't matter if she can provide convincing evidence to the contrary. And Steven, if she's been planning this for a year, she's had plenty of time to create that evidence. Marcus gathered the folders and stood up. Angela wants to meet with both of us tomorrow evening. There are some things we need to discuss about protecting yourself, but I need more time to investigate Sarah's recent activities. As I watched him leave, I realized I was sitting in a diner surrounded by normal people living normal lives, while mine had just been revealed to be an elaborate lie. The woman I'd been married to for 3 years wasn't who I thought she was. The business partner I trusted with everything had been systematically robbing me. And according to Marcus, the worst was yet to come. The next evening, Angela's living room felt like a war room. Marcus had spread documents across her coffee table, while my sister paced nervously by the window. I'd spent 36 hours in a fog mechanically going through the motions of normal life, while Sarah acted like the loving wife she'd never actually been. I've got more information, Marcus announced without preamble. And Steven, you're going to want to sit down for this. I remained standing, afraid that sitting would make me feel even more powerless than I already did. Marcus opened a new folder filled with surveillance photos. I followed your wife yesterday after she left the gym. She went straight to David Martinez's apartment complex on Riverside Drive. The photos showed Sarah using her own key to enter the building. Timestamps showed she arrived at 11:47 in the morning and didn't leave until 4:30 in the afternoon. She has a key. She's been living there part-time for at least 2 months. The doorman recognized her and mentioned she gets mail delivered there under the name Sarah Martinez. The room went silent, except for the ticking of Angela's grandfather clock. Sarah had been pretending to be married to David while still married to me. There's more. Marcus pulled out financial documents. David has been embezzling from your company for much longer than we initially thought. I had a forensic accountant review the records going back 2 years. The theft totals over $150,000. He showed me a detailed spreadsheet tracking the various schemes David had been running. Fake vendor payments, inflated invoices, phantom employee bonuses that went directly to his accounts. He's been using your business credit cards for personal expenses and disguising them as legitimate costs. That business trip to Denver last month, he never went to Denver. He and Sarah spent 4 days at a luxury resort in Scottsdale. The photos from the resort showed David and Sarah by a pool holding hands and laughing. She was wearing a bikini I'd never seen before, and a diamond bracelet that definitely hadn't come from me. How long has this been going on? The financial theft started about 18 months ago, right after David convinced you to give him broader access to the company accounts. The affair began approximately 10 months ago based on the pattern of their meetings. Angela finally spoke from her position by the window. Steven, there's something else we discovered. Show him the recordings. Marcus pulled out a small digital recorder and placed it on the coffee table. I installed surveillance equipment in David's apartment yesterday while they were both out. What you're about to hear was recorded this morning. He pressed play, and Sarah's voice filled the room with crystal clarity. The lawyer said we need to move faster. Steven's been asking questions about the account balances, and I think he might be getting suspicious. David's voice responded. Don't worry. Once you file the domestic violence claim, the court will freeze everything. He won't be able to access any of the business accounts or personal assets while the case is pending. But what if he fights it? He won't have a chance. We've documented everything perfectly. The photos of your injuries, the recordings of him losing his temper, the witnesses who will testify about his erratic behavior. No judge is going to believe him over you. My blood turned to ice. What photos? What injuries? I've never heard her. Marcus stopped the recording. Keep listening. Sarah's voice continued. I still can't believe how easy it was to fake the bruises with makeup. And getting his friend Jake to confirm that Steven seemed unstable at the party was brilliant. The beauty of it is that once he's arrested for domestic violence, the company automatically transfers to me as the remaining partner. We'll have everything: the business, the house, all the assets he's worked for. And he'll be too busy dealing with criminal charges to fight us. David laughed on the recording. 3 more weeks and we'll be free to go wherever we want. Maybe that place in Costa Rica we talked about. Marcus turned off the recorder. There's more, but I think you get the picture. I sat down heavily in Angela's armchair, finally understanding the full scope of their plan. They're going to frame me for domestic violence to steal everything I've worked for. It's a sophisticated scheme, Marcus admitted. If they pull it off, you'll lose your business, your home, your savings, and potentially face jail time for crimes you didn't commit. Angela came over and knelt beside my chair. Steven, I know this is overwhelming, but we're not going to let them destroy you. Marcus has a plan. I looked up at both of them. What kind of plan? Marcus smiled for the first time since I'd met him. The kind where we turn their own scheme against them. But first, there's something else you need to know about the party where Sarah humiliated you. He pulled out security footage from Jake's house. Your friend Jake has cameras throughout his property. I convinced him to let me review the footage from that night, and I discovered something very interesting. The video showed Sarah in Jake's kitchen 30 minutes before the incident with me. She was on her phone speaking quietly to someone. I had the audio enhanced. She's talking to David, telling him that you're about to approach her and that this is the perfect opportunity to create a scene that would support their domestic violence claim. The footage showed Sarah positioning herself specifically where the most people would witness our interaction. She'd planned the entire humiliation. The public rejection was designed to make you look unstable and controlling in front of witnesses. Marcus explained. They needed people to remember seeing you in a negative light so they could point to it later as evidence of your deteriorating mental state. I watched myself on the video approaching Sarah with innocent affection, having no idea I was walking into a carefully orchestrated trap. But here's what they didn't count on. Marcus continued. Your sister had already contacted me by that point. We knew something was happening. We just didn't know the full scope. So when Angela saw how you reacted at the party, calm, and knowing she realized you were ready to hear the truth. Angela squeezed my shoulder. That's why you said it was going to be your last bad night. Somehow you already knew. I thought back to that moment on Jake's patio. Maybe I had known deep down. Maybe part of me had been waiting for someone to confirm what I'd been trying not to see. So what do we do now? I asked. Marcus and Angela exchanged a look that told me they'd already been planning. Now, Marcus said, we give them exactly what they think they want while building the case that will destroy them instead. 3 days later, I was sitting in attorney Catherine Ross's downtown office learning just how deep Sarah and David's betrayal actually went. Catherine was a sharp woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of confidence that came from decades of courtroom victories. The domestic violence charges your wife is planning to file are more serious than Marcus initially realized. Catherine began opening a thick file. According to my contact at the prosecutor's office, she's not just claiming emotional abuse. She showed me photographs that made my stomach lurch. They depicted a woman with severe facial bruising, black eyes, and what appeared to be handprint marks on her neck. These are the photos Sarah plans to submit as evidence of physical abuse. She's created an elaborate backstory claiming you've been beating her for months and that she was too afraid to report it until now. I studied the images in horror. That's not me. I've never laid a hand on her. Of course not. The bruises are professionally applied makeup, probably done by someone with theater or film experience. But to an untrained eye, they look completely authentic. Marcus leaned forward from his chair beside me. It gets worse. Sarah has been secretly recording conversations in your home for weeks, trying to provoke you into saying something that could be taken out of context. Catherine played an audio file on her computer. It was my voice, clearly agitated. I'm sick of your lies, Sarah. I know what you're doing, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. When did you have this conversation with her? Catherine asked. I thought for a moment. Last Tuesday night. She claimed she was working late again, but her car was already in the garage when I got home from the office. When I asked about it, she got defensive and started accusing me of not trusting her. Listen to how she's going to present this to the court. Catherine played another audio file, the same conversation but edited. All of Sarah's provoking comments had been removed, leaving only my frustrated responses strung together. The edited version made it sound like I was threatening her during an unprovoked, angry outburst. I'm sick of your lies, Sarah. I know what you're doing, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. She's been baiting you into arguments and then editing the recordings to make you sound dangerous and unstable, Marcus explained. Combined with the fake photos and witness testimony, it would be enough to get you arrested. Catherine pulled out another document. But here's the most disturbing part. David has been in contact with several of your business clients, telling them you've been acting erratically and suggesting they might want to consider alternative service providers. She showed me email exchanges between David and my 3 largest clients. He'd been systematically undermining my reputation while positioning himself as the stable, trustworthy partner they should work with instead. He's trying to steal your client base before you even realize what's happening. Catherine continued. Once you're arrested on domestic violence charges, he'll contact them immediately and offer to continue their projects through his own company. I felt like I was suffocating. How is this legal? It's not. Wire fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, filing false police reports, defamation. They've committed multiple felonies. But if their plan works, you'll be too busy defending yourself against criminal charges to pursue justice. Marcus opened his own folder. There's more. Sarah filed a motion for emergency spousal support yesterday. She's claiming you've been financially controlling and that she needs immediate access to marital assets for her safety and security. She's asking for temporary custody of all joint assets, including the house and your share of the business, Catherine added. The hearing is scheduled for next Friday, right after she plans to file the domestic violence charges. I stared at the legal documents, trying to process the timeline. So I get arrested, she gets emergency orders giving her everything, and by the time I'm released from jail, they've destroyed my business and disappeared with all our assets. That appears to be the plan, Catherine confirmed. Except for one thing they don't know. She smiled and exchanged a look with Marcus. Angela contacted me 6 weeks ago, right after she first hired Marcus. We've been building a countercase this entire time. Marcus pulled out a thick folder I hadn't seen before. Every conversation Sarah and David had in his apartment has been recorded. Every financial transaction has been documented. Every lie they've told has been cataloged and verified. But more importantly, Catherine continued, we've been working with the FBI's white-collar crime division. Wire fraud and conspiracy across state lines make this a federal case. She showed me official FBI documents with federal case numbers. Agent Patricia Hernandez has been reviewing all the evidence Marcus collected, They're prepared to arrest both Sarah and David on federal charges. I felt a surge of hope for the first time in weeks. When, "That depends on you," Catherine said. "We can move now and stop them before they file the false charges against you. Or we can let them proceed with their plan and catch them in the act of filing fraudulent documents with the court." Marcus leaned forward. "If we stop them now, they might be able to claim they were just planning to steal the money, but never actually intended to file false police reports. But if we let them file the domestic violence charges, they commit multiple additional felonies in the process, and we have irrefutable evidence of their intent to use the court system to defraud you." Catherine finished. "The sentences would be much more severe." I understood the choice they were offering me. I could play it safe and end this now, or I could take the risk of being arrested on false charges in order to ensure Sarah and David faced the maximum consequences for their crimes. How long would I be in jail if they arrest me? Probably just overnight, assuming we can get an emergency hearing the next day. Catherine replied. "But Stephen, I won't lie to you. There's always a risk that something could go wrong." I thought about everything Sarah and David had put me through. The months of lies, the systematic theft, the calculated destruction of my reputation and relationships. They'd been planning to send me to prison for crimes I didn't commit while they lived happily on the money they'd stolen from me. "I want them to face the maximum penalties," I said finally. "Let them file the charges. We'll catch them in the act." Marcus smiled grimly. "I was hoping you'd say that, because Angela and I have been working on something special to make sure they can't escape justice this time." "What kind of something, I asked. Catherine's smile was predatory. "The kind that ensures they'll never see freedom again." Part 6. The Counterattack Strategy. "Welcome to Operation Truth," Angela announced as I descended the stairs. "For the past month, we've been preparing for war." Marcus looked up from a computer screen showing real-time footage from David's apartment. "We've been monitoring their communications around the clock. Sarah has no idea that everything she says and does is being recorded for the FBI." He played a recent recording from that morning. Sarah's voice was excited as she spoke to David. "The attorney confirmed that the domestic violence filing will happen tomorrow morning. Stephen will be arrested at his office around 10:30, right in front of his employees and any clients who happen to be there." David's laughter was audible through the speakers. "Perfect. Public humiliation will make it easier to convince the clients to switch to my company. I've already drafted the emails I'll send out tomorrow afternoon." Catherine looked up from her legal documents. "Federal agents will be in position to arrest both of them the moment Sarah signs the false police report. But there's something else we've set up that I think you'll appreciate." She pulled out a folder marked Collaborative Evidence. "We've been working with your accountant, Robert Chen, for the past 3 weeks. He's been helping us trace every dollar they've stolen and documenting their methods." "Robert's been in on this." Angela nodded. "He contacted me after Sarah tried to convince him to falsify your business tax records. She wanted him to show that you'd been hiding income and engaging in tax fraud." Marcus pulled up financial documents on one of his monitors. "Robert has been recording all of Sarah's conversations with him. She's been trying to create evidence that you're a criminal so she can justify taking everything in the divorce." The recordings showed Sarah pressuring Robert to alter tax documents, forge invoices, and create fake financial statements that would make me look like I'd been cheating the government for years. "But here's the beautiful part," Catherine said. "Every time Sarah asked Robert to commit fraud on her behalf, she was also committing additional federal crimes. Conspiracy to commit tax fraud solicitation, of falsifying federal documents, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government." She showed me a charging document that listed over 20 separate federal offenses Sarah and David had committed. The minimum sentence for these charges is 15 years in federal prison. Maximum is 35 years. I felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced since learning about their betrayal. "They're going to spend decades in prison. Only if everything goes according to plan tomorrow," Marcus cautioned. "Sarah filing the false domestic violence report is the final piece we need to make the conspiracy charges stick. Until she actually submits fraudulent documents to law enforcement, she could claim she was just venting or fantasizing about revenge. Angela pulled out a timeline showing the next day's events. Sarah has an appointment with Detective Maria Rodriguez at 9:15 tomorrow morning. She'll bring the fake photos, the edited audio recordings, and a written statement claiming you've been abusing her for months. Detective Rodriguez is working with the FBI on this case, Catherine added. She'll allow Sarah to complete the entire false report process before federal agents make the arrests. Marcus pointed to surveillance photos of the police station. We'll have agents positioned throughout the building to ensure Sarah and David can't escape once they realize what's happening. David will be arrested at his apartment 30 seconds after Sarah finishes filing the report. Angela explained. Agent Hernandez wants to make sure they can't communicate with each other or coordinate their stories. Catherine pulled out another set of documents. But Stephen, there's something else you need to know about tomorrow. After Sarah files the false police report, local police will still be obligated to arrest you while the FBI sorts everything out. My stomach dropped. How long will that take? A few hours at most. Catherine has already prepared the paperwork to get you released immediately once the federal arrests are made, Marcus assured me. But you'll need to be prepared for the possibility that some of your employees and clients will see you being arrested. Angela placed her hand on my shoulder. That's why we've prepared this. She handed me a letter addressed to all company employees and clients. It explains what's been happening and assures them that normal business operations will continue once the situation is resolved. I read through the letter, which detailed David's embezzlement and explained that his arrest was imminent. It was professional and factual without being unnecessarily dramatic. Robert will distribute this letter to everyone 30 minutes after the arrests are made, Catherine explained. By the time people start asking questions, they'll already have the answers. Marcus pulled up security footage from my office building. We've also coordinated with building security to ensure minimal disruption to your other tenants. The arrest will happen quickly and quietly. I felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation about the next day's events. What about Sarah's family? They're going to see their daughter arrested on federal charges. Actually, that's something else we need to tell you, Angela said carefully. Sarah's sister Emma contacted Marcus last week. Marcus pulled out a recorded phone call. Emma suspected something was wrong when Sarah started asking her to lie to you about where she'd been on certain days. She's been keeping her own records of Sarah's behavior. Emma's voice came through the speakers. Sarah asked me to tell Stephen that she was with me last Sunday afternoon if he ever asked. But I saw her Instagram post from that expensive restaurant downtown with some man I'd never seen before. She's definitely cheating on him. Emma has agreed to testify for the prosecution, Catherine added. She said she's tired of being asked to help her sister lie to her husband. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah had been so confident in her manipulation that she'd recruited her own family members to help deceive me, not realizing they would eventually recognize what she was doing. There's one more thing, Marcus said, pulling out a final folder. We've recovered most of the money they stole. The FBI has frozen all accounts associated with David's shell companies, and we've identified where Sarah has been hiding the cash. He showed me bank statements from accounts in Sarah's name that I'd never known existed. The balances totaled over $90,000. Once they're convicted, all of this money will be returned to you with interest, Catherine explained. Plus, you'll be able to pursue civil damages for emotional distress damage to your reputation and lost business. I looked around the basement command center at the 3 people who had worked tirelessly to save me from my wife's betrayal. How can I ever thank you for all of this? Just promise me you'll be careful tomorrow, Angela said. No matter how this plays out, our family comes first. Marcus started shutting down the surveillance equipment. Sarah and David have no idea what's waiting for them. By tomorrow evening, they'll be in federal custody facing decades in prison. Catherine gathered her legal documents. And Stephen, by tomorrow evening, you'll be free to rebuild your life surrounded by people who actually care about you. As we prepared to leave Angela's house, I realized that in less than 24 hours, the nightmare that had consumed my life for months would finally be over. Sarah and David would face justice, and I would have the chance to start fresh with people I could trust. The only question remaining was whether I was strong enough to watch the woman I'd once loved destroy her own life through her greed and betrayal. The morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood as I sat in my office trying to focus on routine paperwork, while knowing that in a few hours my life would change forever. At 9 o'clock, Marcus called to confirm that Sarah had left our house and was driving toward the police station. "She's carrying a briefcase and appears nervous," he reported. "Federal agents are in position throughout the building." I tried to imagine Sarah walking into the police station briefcase filled with fabricated evidence, preparing to destroy the life of the man she'd promised to love and cherish. The woman who'd made breakfast that morning and kissed my cheek before I left for work was about to commit multiple felonies in an attempt to send me to prison. At 9:23, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Package delivery in progress." That was the code phrase meaning Sarah had begun filing the false police report. I forced myself to continue working, reviewing client contracts, and responding to emails while my wife systematically lied to law enforcement about crimes I'd never committed. The normalcy of office routine felt surreal against the backdrop of federal agents preparing to arrest the two people I'd trusted most in the world. At 9:57, Marcus called again. "Package delivered successfully. Secondary delivery in progress." Sarah had finished filing the report, and federal agents were now arresting David at his apartment. At 10:02, Detective Rodriguez called my office directly. "Mr. Thompson, I need you to come down to the station immediately. Your wife has filed some serious allegations, and we need to discuss them with you." "I'll be right there," I replied, though we both knew I was walking into a carefully orchestrated performance designed to protect the integrity of the FBI's operation. The drive to the police station felt like traveling through a dream. Normal people went about their normal lives while I prepared to be arrested for crimes that existed only in my wife's imagination. I parked in the visitor lot and walked through the front doors wondering if Sarah was still inside or if federal agents had already taken her away. Detective Rodriguez met me in the lobby. She was a professional woman in her 40s, with kind eyes that apologized for what she was about to do. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to need you to come with me." She led me to an interview room where another detective was waiting with handcuffs. The process was quick and efficient. Wright's red cuffs applied, formal arrest completed. They were gentle but thorough, treating me with the respect of someone they suspected might be innocent while following proper procedures. "Your attorney is already on her way," Detective Rodriguez assured me as they led me to a holding cell. "This should be resolved very quickly." The holding cell was exactly what I'd expected: concrete walls, metal bench, fluorescent lighting. I sat down and tried to process the fact that I was in jail because my wife had convinced law enforcement that I was a violent criminal. But I wasn't angry anymore. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace, knowing that Sarah and David were experiencing their own arrests at that exact moment, facing charges far more serious than the ones they'd tried to fabricate against me. 47 minutes later, Catherine Ross arrived with paperwork in hand and federal agents behind her. "Stephen, it's over. Sarah and David are in federal custody, and all charges against you have been dropped." Agent Patricia Hernandez introduced herself as they released me from the cell. "Mr. Thompson, I want to personally apologize for what you had to endure today. Your wife and former business partner have been charged with multiple federal offenses based on evidence we've been gathering for weeks." As we walked through the police station, Agent Hernandez explained what had happened after my arrest. "Mrs. Thompson was still in the building when we arrested her. She seemed genuinely shocked that we knew about her financial crimes." "What did she say?" "She immediately tried to blame everything on David Martinez, claiming she was a victim of his manipulation. When that didn't work, she offered to testify against him in exchange for reduced charges." Catherine smiled grimly. "Unfortunately for her, we have recordings of her enthusiastically participating in every aspect of their conspiracy. She's going to have a very difficult time claiming she was coerced. Agent Hernandez handed me a folder containing preliminary charges. Wire fraud conspiracy to commit fraud filing false police reports, embezzlement tax evasion, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Mr. Martinez faces additional charges for his role in the business embezzlement. The list of charges was longer than I'd expected. What kind of sentences are they looking at? Minimum 15 years for Mrs. Thompson, minimum 20 years for Mr. Martinez. But given the sophistication of their scheme and the amount of money involved, they'll likely receive much longer sentences. We walked to Catherine's car and she handed me my phone, which had been ringing constantly. Your sister has been trying to reach you. She's at your office dealing with the aftermath. I called Angela immediately. How bad is the situation there? Actually, it's better than we expected, she replied. Robert distributed the explanation letter to all your employees and major clients. Most people are shocked about David, but they're supportive of you and want to make sure the business continues operating normally. That was a relief I hadn't expected. Any problems? Jake Sullivan called to apologize for Sarah manipulating him into supporting her false narrative. He feels terrible about being used as part of their scheme. As Catherine drove me back to my office, Agent Hernandez called with an update. Both defendants have requested attorneys and are refusing to speak with us. Mrs. Thompson asked specifically whether she could still pursue divorce proceedings. The audacity was stunning. Even facing decades in federal prison, Sarah was still thinking about how to profit from our marriage. What did you tell her? That any divorce proceedings would be complicated by the federal criminal charges and the asset forfeiture associated with her crimes. Catherine explained that all the money Sarah and David had stolen would be returned to me as part of the restitution process. The FBI has frozen all their accounts and seized their personal assets. You should recover everything they took, plus additional damages. As we pulled into my office parking lot, I saw several employees standing outside looking concerned but supportive. My secretary Martha approached the car immediately. Stephen, we're so glad you're okay. We can't believe what David was doing behind your back. Over the next several hours, I fielded calls from clients, employees, and friends who had heard about the arrests. The overwhelming response was support and sympathy, along with amazement at the elaborate nature of Sarah and David's scheme. That evening, Angela and I sat in my living room not Sarah's anymore, trying to process everything that had happened. Are you okay? She asked. I thought about it carefully. I think I am. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. Any regrets about how we handled it? None. They chose to destroy themselves through their greed and betrayal. We just made sure they faced consequences for their actions. The phone rang and Catherine's name appeared on the caller ID. Stephen, I have some news. Both defendants have been denied bail due to flight risk. They'll remain in federal custody until trial. How long until trial? Probably 6 to 9 months, but Stephen David's attorney contacted me this afternoon. He wants to discuss a plea agreement. The possibility of David cooperating with prosecutors to reduce his sentence made sense, but I didn't feel ready to think about that yet. What about Sarah? Her attorney hasn't contacted us yet, but given the strength of our evidence, I expect plea negotiations to begin soon. After hanging up, I walked through the house Sarah and I had shared, looking at it with new eyes. The expensive furniture and artwork I'd thought she'd bought with her salary had actually been purchased with money stolen from our accounts. The woman I'd trusted with my heart and my future had been systematically planning my destruction for over a year. But instead of feeling bitter, I felt grateful. Grateful for Angela's vigilance, Marcus's professionalism, Catherine's expertise, and the FBI's commitment to justice. Most of all, I felt grateful for the opportunity to rebuild my life surrounded by people who actually cared about me. Sarah and David had thought they were smart enough to outsmart everyone. Instead, they'd been outsmarted by their own greed and the dedication of people who refused to let them succeed. Justice, it turned out, was sweeter than revenge. 6 months after Sarah and David's arrests, I stood in the same courthouse where they'd planned to destroy my life, watching a very different kind of justice unfold. Both had accepted plea agreements to avoid trial. Sarah received 12 years in federal prison, while David got 18 years for his leadership role in the conspiracy. The restitution hearing had been a revelation. Not only did I recover the stolen money, but the civil damages awarded exceeded $200,000. Sarah's expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and luxury items were sold at auction, with proceeds going toward my compensation. My business had not only survived, but thrived. Without David's constant undermining, I'd gained 3 major new clients who appreciated my integrity and transparency. Martha had been promoted to office manager, and I'd hired 2 additional employees to handle the increased workload. "Any final thoughts before we close this chapter?" Catherine asked as we left the courthouse together. I looked back at the building where Sarah had once planned to falsely accuse me of domestic violence. I keep thinking about how close they came to succeeding. If Angela hadn't been paying attention, but she was paying attention. That's what people who love you do. Angela had been incredible throughout the entire ordeal. She'd taken a leave of absence from her teaching job to help coordinate my legal defense and business recovery. Our relationship had grown stronger than it had ever been. Speaking of people who love you, Catherine continued with a smile. "Are you ready for your dinner tonight?" I checked my watch. Jennifer Walsh, the attorney who'd initially been hired to handle Sarah's divorce plans, had become a close friend during the legal proceedings. Her insights into Sarah's manipulative behavior had been invaluable, and somewhere along the way, professional respect had evolved into something deeper. "I think I am," I replied honestly. That evening, Jennifer and I sat at Romano's, the same restaurant where Marcus had first photographed Sarah with David. But instead of betrayal and deception, our conversation was filled with honesty and genuine connection. "How are you feeling about everything?" Jennifer asked over dinner. "Relieved mostly, and grateful." I looked around the restaurant, remembering the photos Marcus had shown me months earlier. I keep thinking about second chances and the importance of recognizing real love versus manipulation. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. Sarah was very good at creating the illusion of love while serving her own interests. But that experience taught you to recognize authentic emotions. She was right. My marriage to Sarah had been built on lies and financial opportunism disguised as romance. But getting to know Jennifer had shown me what genuine care and respect actually felt like. Over the following months, I established the Truth and Trust Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of financial fraud in marriage and business partnerships. Marcus had agreed to serve as our chief investigator, while Angela handled educational outreach to help people recognize warning signs of financial manipulation. Our first case involved a woman whose husband had been stealing from her inheritance while claiming to invest it for their future. Her story was eerily similar to mine, a trusted partner systematically destroying someone who loved them unconditionally. The hardest part, she told me during our consultation, is accepting that someone you trusted completely could plan your destruction so methodically. I understood that feeling perfectly. But here's what I've learned: their betrayal says everything about who they are and nothing about who you are. The capacity to trust and love deeply is a strength, not a weakness. A year after the trials, Jennifer and I were engaged. Our relationship had grown slowly and deliberately, built on complete honesty about our pasts, our goals, and our expectations. There were no secrets, no hidden agendas, no financial mysteries. "Are you nervous about marriage again?" Angela asked as we planned the engagement party. "Not nervous, but definitely more aware," I replied. "I know the difference now between someone who loves you and someone who loves what you can provide for them." Jennifer and I had established separate financial accounts alongside our joint ones, and we'd both insisted on complete transparency about our assets and debts. Trust needed to be earned and maintained, not simply assumed. The engagement party was held at Angela's house, surrounded by people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life. Marcus brought his wife Catherine, came with her husband, and even Detective Rodriguez attended with her family. "I've been thinking about everything that happened," I said during my speech that night. And I realized that Sarah and David's betrayal led me to discover who my real family and friends actually were. I looked around at the gathered faces, people who had risked their time, energy, and professional reputations to help me survive an elaborate scheme designed to destroy my life. They thought they were smart enough to manipulate everyone around them, but they underestimated the power of genuine relationships built on trust and mutual respect. Jennifer squeezed my hand as I continued. Their greed and selfishness ultimately destroyed them, while the love and loyalty of real friends saved me. That's a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life. As the party wound down, Angela pulled me aside for a private conversation. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been suspicious? I thought about that question seriously. They would have succeeded in destroying me financially and personally. I'd probably be in prison right now while they lived happily on the money they'd stolen. Any regrets about how everything played out? Only one, I replied. I regret not recognizing Sarah's true nature sooner. But I've learned that sometimes the most important lessons come from our most painful experiences. Angela smiled and hugged me tightly. I'm proud of how you handled everything. You could have become bitter and suspicious of everyone, but instead, you learned to recognize the difference between real love and manipulation. 6 months later, Jennifer and I were married in a small ceremony attended by the same friends and family who had helped me survive Sarah's betrayal. Our vows were simple but meaningful promises to maintain honesty, respect each other's independence, and always communicate openly about challenges. During our honeymoon in Colorado, I received a letter forwarded from Catherine's office. It was from Sarah writing from federal prison. The letter was full of self-pity and attempts to justify her actions. She claimed she'd been confused and desperate that David had manipulated her into participating in the fraud. She asked for my forgiveness and suggested that we might reconcile after her release. I read the letter once and threw it away without responding. Everything okay? Jennifer asked, noticing my expression. Just Sarah trying to manipulate me one more time, I replied. Some people never learn. Jennifer nodded understandingly. The capacity for self-reflection and genuine change requires a level of character she's never demonstrated. That afternoon, as Jennifer and I hiked through the Rocky Mountains, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. Sarah's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also freed me from a relationship built on lies and led me to people who truly cared about my well-being. The view from the mountain peak was breathtaking, endless possibilities stretching toward the horizon. What are you thinking about? Jennifer asked as we rested at the summit. Second chances, me, I replied. And how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things in our lives. Trust, I had learned, was like climbing a mountain. It required careful attention to each step, awareness of potential dangers, and the wisdom to know when you'd found solid ground. But the view from the top made every difficult step worthwhile. Sarah and David had thought they could steal my future, but instead they'd given me the opportunity to build a better one, surrounded by people worthy of trust. Sometimes justice isn't just about punishment. It's about the freedom to start over with wisdom earned through adversity. Now I want to ask you something important. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone close to you betrayed your trust in a significant way? How did you recognize the warning signs, and what helped you rebuild your confidence in relationships afterward? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and building authentic relationships. And don't forget to share this with anyone who might benefit from learning about the warning signs of financial manipulation in relationships. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of a community that believes in truth, justice, and the power of genuine human connections. Remember that your capacity to trust and love deeply is never a weakness. It's one of your greatest strengths. The key is learning to direct that trust toward people who truly deserve it. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and surround yourself with people who prove their love through consistent actions. not just words.